Hello and welcome to On Point. My name is Sahaba, and today we're in Los Angeles, California at a marketing event where you can explore and purchase a lot of cultural artifacts. Learning to understand another culture is important, but what's the difference between celebrating another culture and stealing from it? Is taking something from another culture different from yours and using it for personal interest an act of appreciation? Sometimes appropriation can even be as simple as wearing a piece of clothing from a different culture as a fashion statement. In October, pop star singer Adele responded to critics and fans who were triggered by an outfit and hairstyle she had wore to a festival last year. The singer wore a Jamaican flag print bikini and Bantu knots in her hair, a style worn by black women in the region. Adele later told British Vogue she had been trying to celebrate Jamaican culture, but quote, hadn't read the room. As BuzzFeed News pointed out in September, a lot of so-called internet slang is actually rooted in black culture. Examples of African American vernacular English, AAVE, being used out of context. Celebrities such as Aquafina, Camila Cabello, and Miley Cyrus, to name a few, have all faced criticism for apparent usage of blaccent or racism online. But it isn't just celebrities who get stuck. For example, Halloween costumes with Native American themes or Dia de los Muertos celebrations that miss the holiday's true meaning can also cause harm. How do we honor and respect these cultures without damaging their image? Who decides what crosses the line between cultural appropriation and cultural appreciation? On Point's Natalie Sierra has more.
Thank you, Javian. I'm here with today's guests, Latina Rising Advisor here at CSUN, Vanessa Galvan, and California State University of Bakersfield sociology graduate, Ivy Randall. And I'm so excited to get this conversation started. So we can begin with our first question. Why do you think people feel the need to partake in cultures that aren't their own, especially knowing their actions could harm the community they are appropriating? Vanessa, let's start with you.
From the first sight, it seems like folks want to partake because they see something nice, they see something shiny, they see something different, something exotic, something they hadn't thought of, especially like celebrations, like things around like celebrational time. So like one that I think of right off the bat is Dia de los Muertos, right? Dia de los Muertos is a time to like celebrate and recognize loved ones who have passed. And other people may want to like participate because they connect with that, right? But I feel like there's like boundaries and stuff and ways to like connect with other celebrations and other cultures and stuff. So right at the beginning, it just may seem very like shiny, ooh, ah, but it's always important to remember there's cultural context and there's origins and there's stuff, there's more to it than just a celebration at times. And so that's just kind of my first thoughts.
Yeah, and Ivy, your thoughts?
So I think a lot of times it's just about a sense of community, wanting to connect with other people, wanting to be able to understand other people or be a part of some type of group or a part of different events. But kind of like Vanessa said, I think people get really excited about the event and the fun parts about it, that they don't take time to inform themselves on the history and why people celebrate these cultures or why people participate in certain things. And I think when people do educate themselves, it helps put them more on the appreciation side rather than the appropriation side.
Okay, and what parts of your culture do you think is most appropriated? Vanessa, we can start with you again.
As a Latina, I would say, well, not only as a Latina, personally, I am Mexican American. So being so close to the border of Mexico, I feel like the things that not get appropriated, but that are celebrated a lot is like Cinco de Mayo, which I think is a very fascinating thing because I feel like us Mexicans don't even celebrate Cinco de Mayo. But there's this obsession with Cinco de Mayo, the hats, and then the tacos, and also this idea that everything Mexican is just all Latino America. So it's very like, Ivy mentioned, like they don't take the time to like really learn about like the separation and what does the Mexican hat even represent? How is it used? Why do Mexicans have this really big hat, right? So it's just things like that that just come to mind.
And you, Ivy?
I am Black and Hispanic, and I, in the Black side, I feel like a lot of times people don't really they don't educate themselves. And so kind of like with hip hop, rap music, hairstyles is a big thing right now. People not understanding, where braids come from and what braids originate from what places, the historical importance of wearing your hair certain ways and why people do or did, just not really educating themselves on the history of that, and then not really taking the time to listen to Black people when they say, this is why it's important. I think that's really the thing that I think a lot of minorities can relate to, is when we voice our opinions and why we might feel hurt by certain things, people who aren't a part of those groups don't listen. So I think that like music and hairstyles and kind of like Vanessa said, like cultural things of cultural importance and cultural value just don't really, people don't educate themselves on the reasoning behind it.
That's very, very important, the education part of it. And Vanessa, you mentioned Cinco de Mayo, and I wanted to ask, the way people appropriate it in that sense, what do you think this does to the Mexican American community?
I feel like it's twofold, and I'll explain a little bit. I feel like it's twofold in the way that it minimizes the community to kind of be just like Cinco de Mayo and that's it, period. That's all about Mexican culture. Just look at Cinco de Mayo and it seems just very, yeah, I guess the best word I can choose, like minimize. But also like on the flip side, like I do know Mexicans that do celebrate Cinco de Mayo, and it's just an excuse for them to like get out and party, and like they're like perpetuating. So it's like it's twofold, right? Like we're trying to stop it, but then we do have people within our own community that is still perpetuating. And the reason I bring this up is because I recently I went on a trip to Mexico, and it was really awesome. And for entertainment, they decided to do a macho Mexican man like contest. And so they were trying to get different volunteers from the audience and stuff to come up and like pretend to be a macho man. And what they had them do was they wore the Mexican hat, they dressed them up with the sarape and stuff. And it was different cultures from different races. But the part that bothered me was that they were perpetuating the stereotype of like Mexican macho men. And they forced men to say, there was this woman who had a tequila, so her goal was to like bring the tequila over, but the men had to ask for it in a certain way, and the men had to say, "Maria, Maria, tráeme mi tequila," and it's just blatantly like, "Maria, Maria, bring me my tequila," right? And one man decided to say, "Maria, Maria, please bring me my tequila." And the speaker, the MC was like, "No, no, no, we don't say please when you're talking to your wife." So like things, and I was just like, ew, that is absolutely not right, not correct. And it was a little shameful that, it's not cultural appropriation, but like, this perpetuating of like letting it pass, letting things like we're okay with it. And I feel like part of us is like, no, part of us is not okay with it, but there are people out there that are like, oh, I don't care about Cinco de Mayo. Go ahead and wear the hat. Go ahead and drink your tequila and have your tacos. But it's like, there's so much more to it. And for me, it bothers me sometimes. But I have to pick my battles.
Yes. And do you think, like that cultural aspect of it, do you think it also endorses like sexism?
Most definitely. There is, and culture is it's intersectional, right? We have many different identities in culture. And so when we talk about Latino, it's like, we're not talking about how there's violence against women and jokes that people talk about and stuff like that. Or how about like our queer community and the Latinx community and things like that. Like there's so much more to talk about than it's just like plain what we can see or what we consider as like Mexican or we consider as Latino. Like things are so much more nuanced, and some folks want to like separate that, but you can't separate an identity. People come in with everything that they are. And so for you to like figure out like, oh, I'm not going to offend this identity, like it just,
Yes.
be respectful of the whole person, really.
Yes. Ivy, I wanted to jump into something else. The use of African American vernacular English. I wanted to talk about how when non-Black people use that, how does that affect your community?
It's really interesting because I'm kind of, I'm in this day and age where it seems like social media is like a part of everything. And I do believe that many times people don't have bad intentions when they participate in certain things or when they want to be a part of a trend or something that is, something that everybody's doing, right? Oh, everybody's doing it, so I want to be part of it. So I do think that people have good intentions behind the things that they do, but a lot of times when people say certain things, when they participate in AAVE, right? It can come off very much like you're making fun or you're adopting this black, this persona or idea of what you think a black woman or a black man is, and it's stereotypical. And a lot of times people don't realize where they got it from or what it means, what they might think about black people in the back of their minds, right? What they think the norm is or the stereotype is. And it kind of like Vanessa said, it really does perpetuate unhealthy belief systems. And then other people take after that. And so we just have a lot of people who are kind of making a joke out of what it means to be a black man or a black woman. That's why I think it's good that we have conversations like these, because it allows for people to see things from a different perspective, people who aren't black to see things from our perspective and maybe even empathize or sympathize with us and change the way that they participate in certain things or communicate with other black people.
Okay, and I wanted to talk about your thoughts on celebrities who have been called out for appropriation, such as like Aquafina, who uses AAVE, but she hasn't addressed it or stopped using the language.
It's really difficult because I understand, especially in comedy, right? Comedy is a whole other conversation, but I understand that we were in an age where it was like everything kind of goes, right? So if you wanted to, in comedy, right, people would make jokes about different races, different genders, different sexualities, everything, right? Even, people who were disabled, people could get up on a stage and comedians could say whatever they want and there was no type of scorn for it, right? But now we're healing trauma, we're unlocking different types of information, right? And I think as more information comes out, as we learn more as a community, we can change things, right? We can inform people, and we can treat people with more respect, and we can change the way we joke around with people, right? We can change the way that we get clout or we get popular on the internet, right? It doesn't have to be from making fun of marginalized groups. It doesn't have to be by pretending like you're something that you're not, or pretending like you're a group that you're not, right? Because I do think it's harmful. I think that it doesn't show, Black women, Latino women, we aren't a monolith. We're not just one thing, right? We come in all different shapes and sizes. Sometimes we all talk differently and we have different mannerisms, and it's really not a one size fits all. So I think it can be very harmful when the media portrays us as so.
It can be very harmful. And I wanted to talk about, since Halloween just passed, how do you think your culture being used for Halloween costumes inaccurately represents your community? Vanessa, we can begin with you.
Costumes. What I noticed costumes were, I feel like the sombrero is a really big staple. The mustache, I think, is another funny thing that people think of. But one more recently that I feel like started becoming more in, and I really think it has to do with Disney's Coco, is Day of the Dead and Calavera, and the skull makeup, I think is so much more normalized, and I find it at the 99-cent store now, different stuff for skull related and things like that. And I understand skulls are a big part of Halloween, but more specifically painted skulls are very specific to Dia de los Muertos. And so I don't know, I felt some type of way. I feel like the commercializing of it is where I feel like that's the icky part of me. It's folks dressing up for Halloween from stuff that they have at home is one thing, but going out of your way to buy a product to look a certain way, it just doesn't sit well with me. And then where's the corporations are making money off that, and so Not like, I think because when money gets involved, I feel like it just gets even worse. And Halloween is a really big thing in the United States, and a lot of money gets pumped into Halloween and people making these elaborate costumes and stuff. So that's what I've noticed. It's just when it comes, yeah, personally, when it comes to money, is what starts to make things a little bit more bleh.
Yeah. And Ivy, you said you're Hispanic. What about you? Have you seen your culture be used for Halloween costumes?
I think, well, I will speak to something I saw recently, not recently, but in the month of October. There was a lot of people talking about celebrities. This is more on the African American side, but celebrities
Yes, of
doing
course.
like blackface for Halloween, which is something that it's interesting now that like we even have to like have a conversation about it still, but it's just weird. It's just kind of creepy and and it really it's just the insensitivity of it all. And what it tells you is that we still have we have work to do. You know what I
Yes.
mean? And that that we really have to, you know, people use the word like normalize a lot. That's like the buzzword right now. We have normalized this, normalize that, and I think some things need to be like unnormalized because it's just, you know, it wasn't okay then, and it's still not okay, you know. And even with, you know, there's a whole conversation of women wearing, you know, really dark makeup and borderline, you know, makeup that's not their skin tone, right? And borderline, what is blackface, what constitutes as blackface and what doesn't, and how you can dress up as a celebrity or of a different race and not alter your skin tone, right? How that's kind of like an unnecessary thing that people do sometimes. Like you can still get across that you're a celebrity that's a different ethnicity of you without, you know, darkening your skin and things like that. I think that that's something that people need to definitely get out of. And yeah, I just think it's disrespectful. I think it's disrespectful, and I think it's insensitive to people of color. And I think that I think I think that we have a lot of work to do.
Yes, I agree. There's still so much work to be done. And jumping into themed birthday parties, such as Mexican themed, I've seen so many Mexican themed birthday parties. Um, Vanessa, would you consider that appreciation or appropriation?
That's a good question. I feel like to what level? Because like I've seen like a papel picado is something that it's like where it's like that paper that it's all like pretty and stuff like that. I wouldn't I don't know if I would consider that like culture. Like sure, like I feel like it's very apparent in Mexico, but if I wanted to put something up for my kids, like I feel like that's okay. But like I said, like what what elements are you bringing into your birthday party to make it Mexican? Is it your food that you're bringing in and you like catered Mexican and you got it from like, you know, you're supporting you're getting an actual taco person to come and like do, you know what I mean? Like it's just kind of like where's your money going into and what is your intention behind it? Why are you giving your kid this Mexican birthday party? Is it because they're half Mexican? Is it because they're, you know, like is there like what is the reasoning behind it? Is it just because you like the colors? Like I'm just curious to know as like what is your intention? And like Ivy mentioned, like I believe people have good intentions, and if you find a good reason as to why you want to make it Mexican themed and what that looks like, right? So I don't know. It's either or. It just depends, really.
And earlier you guys were talking about how like on social media where people use it for use your culture for humor or things like that. Do you think that society influences or encourages cultural appropriation?
Yeah, I feel like it is encouraged. I feel like we're in a space right now where cultures are like intermingling and like we're like learning about other cultures and stuff, and things are starting to like, wow, I didn't know about that and I want to learn more about that. And I feel like that's the direction that we're trying to get into. Like I want to learn more about the culture and appreciate rather than take away from it. And I think that's that's the struggle. And that's, I think, the big conversation about cultural appropriation, is that people are picking and choosing things about a specific culture without having to deal with any repercussions of what it's like to be from that culture, right? So like Ivy was mentioning, like the darker skinned, and like Kim K like came out with like her makeup line that literally darkens her skin, and she just showed like the suntan, but really it's like it's darker skin. And but what does life look like for people with dark skin and stuff? So she's able to easily remove it with her makeup remover and not have to deal with that life and what that looks like. So it's really like what elements are being taken in and what are being considered and stuff like that.
Ivy, do you think that society influences or encourages cultural appropriation?
So I do think that society encourages cultural appropriation. I think that social media is a weird place. There's part of social media where people are social warrior advocates, right? And they want to share things and share petitions and really help people. I know today there was a whole thing where someone was going to be executed, and I believe with everybody sharing something, they got it pardoned. It was they were convicted falsely convicted, and for a crime, and they were able to get it pardoned to where he just does the full term and doesn't get the death penalty, which I thought was, like that's power of the people, right? But then there are spaces like TikTok where people will participate in these racist or insensitive trends, right? Lightly using trends, and people will say, "Oh, it's no big deal," or there'll be something offensive to Hispanic people or something offensive towards Black people, and non-Black people or non-Hispanic people will give people of other races passes, which I think is like a weird thing that goes on, especially prominent on TikTok, where it's really just, it's a matter of speaking over people who when you're not a part of that group, and speaking over people of that group, that is just very, very dangerous and harmful, and it doesn't help the situation. When you are wanting to participate in a specific culture, you need to be listening to people of that culture and listening to what they're comfortable with. If they say something isn't okay, ask them why. Why isn't okay? Why is this something that offends you? Like, where does that come from? And allow them to educate you. But yeah, I think that as a culture, if we really just listen to each other more and do a little bit less of the talking, right, and listening to people when they're trying to inform us, that's how we can make a change with the cultural appropriation issue.
And what would you guys consider cultural appreciation? Vanessa, we can start with you.
Cultural appreciation, I feel like, comes from a place of learning and understanding what is considered a closed practice. Because I feel like there are things out there that cultures we do want to share, specifically that Mexico, like I don't mind sharing Dia de los Muertos. It is a very beautiful experience, and I would love for other companies, for other cultures to like share that with us. But learning what is closed practice, meaning like, I don't know, the altares that some families create in their own places, and just being respectful of other families and their traditions and stuff, and understanding that Dia de los Muertos looks different in every single country. And so how someone celebrates in Mexico looks different, how they celebrate in Guatemala looks different, how they celebrate in Honduras and stuff. So just understanding the nuances and like what is okay for everybody to enjoy and what is considered a closed practice, more specifically like the religious aspect that I would consider.
And Ivy?
Yeah, I agree. Just really educating yourself on the history of certain things, even if you're a non-Black person and you're reading something online. Let's say you have braids in your hair, right? Let's say you got braids, box braids specifically, or like locks, and you read something online where it says why non-Black people shouldn't wear locks, or why non-Black people shouldn't wear box braids. And instead of, right, you could easily scroll past that and go about your business. But maybe even if it offends you, maybe be like, well, maybe there's something I don't know. Leading in with curiosity is really, rather than defense, is really how you're able to learn and be open to different perspectives and educate yourself. And then you can educate other people too and help other people learn. But I think appreciation is when you know the background, the history, and about the culture, and when you listen to other people from that culture. I think a lot of times we listen to people who aren't a part of certain cultures talk about those cultures, and not saying that that's not okay, but do those people amplify the voices of the cultures they're talking about, right? Do those people, where are they getting their information from? How do they know this information, right? Like, there are certain steps that need to be taken place if you want to inform yourself, to make sure you're getting the correct information, and to make sure that you know the background of the culture you're participating in. And another thing is letting go of your defenses. I think is really important.
Yes, I agree. And do you think there are certain parts of your culture that even with people educating themselves on it, they still couldn't appreciate it in that sense?
I think, well, one thing is just certain words that have been used. I know in the Black community, like, a lot of people do use the N word in certain music and things like that. I think when it comes to words that have been reclaimed by a certain race or a certain group, ethnic group, that needs to stay within that ethnic group. I think a lot of times people of other cultures kind of get it a little confused and think that because they're Black people are reclaiming this word, that other races can reclaim it, but that's not really how that works, especially when a specific group has been targeted and objected to violence when it comes to a certain word or phrase of that nature. So I think like, words that have been reclaimed or certain things that have been reclaimed should kind of remain off limits. That's something that I believe.
And Vanessa?
That's a good one, because I kind of started to think about what are some things that I would consider that someone, not that they couldn't learn about, but like couldn't participate in. And I can't really think of any. I don't know. Ivy, do you have any like from the Latino side that you could think of? Because I feel like our cultures, not that we're inviting, but we are welcoming to like wanting to teach others into this space, as long as they're willing to learn, right? And listen. That's honestly it. If someone comes in with like a thick skull and wants to change it or wants to do something different with it and not see it for what it is or what traditionally it is, that's where it gets sticky. But like, I personally can't think of something that I wouldn't take the time to teach someone else about.
Thank you guys so much for having this conversation with me. I really, really appreciate it.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you. Yeah.
Thank you for watching On Point. You can follow us on social media at CSUN On Point. You can hear us on KCSN 88.5 FM on Sunday mornings at 5:30, and you can watch us on LA 36 in Santa Clarita Valley Television. For all of us here at On Point, I'm Natalie Sierra.